Darius Webb was 38 years old, and until that Tuesday afternoon, he believed he had built something real. A contracting business he started with his own hands, a house he bought at 31, a marriage he poured himself into completely. His mother, Loretta, lived with them, sick, proud, and trusting, and Darius made sure she never wanted for anything. He was that kind of man, steady, loyal, easy to overlook. He came home 20 minutes early that day to drop off her prescription. What he saw when he turned that corner stopped him cold. His wife, Portia, was standing behind his mother's chair, her hand inside Loretta's purse, counting bills, while his mother sat rigid and silent, eyes closed, enduring something she had clearly endured before. Portia turned and found him watching. And in that moment, Darius Webb, the quiet man everyone had always underestimated, made a decision. He didn't yell. He didn't confront her. He said 2 words, walked to the couch that night, and started building something Portia never saw coming. What he uncovered over the next 30 days would cost her everything. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The last wire connection snapped into place with a clean, satisfying click. Darius Webb crouched beside the breaker panel and checked his work the way he always did, not because he doubted himself, but because he respected the process. Every connection clean, every label clear, every path from source to fixture exactly what it was supposed to be. No guessing, no shortcuts. He stood up slowly, pressed the main breaker, and the whole warehouse floor lit up in one long, steady wave of white light. Behind him, one of his crew members let out a low whistle. "Other 2 guys who looked at this panel said the whole thing needed replacing," said Marcus, a younger electrician who had been with Darius for 2 years. He was staring up at the ceiling fixtures like he was watching something miraculous. "Other 2 guys were wrong," Darius said simply. He picked up his tool bag and zipped it closed. Didn't need replacing, just needed someone to actually look at it. The building manager, a stocky man named Gil, who wore the same Cubs hat every day, pumped Darius's hand twice and told him he'd be calling him for the 2nd location in the spring. Darius thanked him, meant it, and walked to his truck. That was how most of his days went. Not loud, not dramatic, just good work done right the first time. He had built Webb Electrical Solutions from nothing, started it at 29 with a used van, a box of tools, and a contractor's license he had studied for across 6 months of night courses after 10-hour shifts. He drove that van until the transmission gave out, then bought a newer one. 1 crew member became 3. 3 became 6. He had landed his first commercial contract at 34, and by 36, he was turning down jobs he didn't have bandwidth for. He was not rich. He knew that. But he owned his work, owned his time, and owned the modest brick house on the south side that he had bought at 31. A house with a big front porch and a yard deep enough to matter. That house was the physical proof of everything he had built from the inside out. He was proud of it in a quiet way. The way a man is proud of things he earned without anyone handing them to him. The drive home took him up I-57, as the sky went pale orange and gray above the tree line. He had the radio on low, Old Soul, the station his mother liked, and his hands were easy on the wheel. He thought about Portia. He did that more on drives lately, turned her over in his mind the way you turn over something unfamiliar, trying to find the angle that makes it make sense. It wasn't one thing. That was what made it hard to name. It was the texture of the last few months, something that had slowly changed temperature without him being able to point to the exact moment it started going cold. Late nights at work, client dinners 2 or 3 times a week, when the month before it had been once. A kind of distraction behind her eyes when they sat across from each other at dinner, like she was present enough to answer questions, but not enough to actually be there. Quick to irritation over small things, slow to reach for him. He was not a suspicious man. That was not how he was built. He believed in asking directly and in taking people at their word until they gave him a reason not to. He had not yet found a reason, but something sat in the back of his chest, quiet and low and still. He filed it away the way he did most things. He kept driving. He stopped at the pharmacy on 159th before getting on the expressway. Loretta's metformin prescription had been ready since noon. He had called it in on his lunch break, same as every month, same as he had been doing since she moved in 2 years ago after the diagnosis. Late-stage type 2. Partial mobility. Some days, better than others. He paid at the counter, put the paper bag on the passenger seat, and pulled back out into traffic. His mother had never asked him to look after her. That was the kind of woman she was, but he was the kind of man who did not wait to be asked. He turned onto his block just past 6:30. The porch light was on, which he had set on a timer. The maple in the front yard had gone mostly gold now, a few leaves skittering across the sidewalk in the evening wind. Everything looked the way it was supposed to look. Then he noticed Portia's white Acura sitting in the driveway. He slowed without meaning to. She had told him this morning, casual, halfway out the door, keys already in her hand, that she had a client dinner in Oakbrook tonight. Don't wait up. He sat in the truck for a moment, engine idling. Maybe it got canceled. Maybe she forgot something and came back. He was not a man who jumped to conclusions. He pulled in behind her car, grabbed the pharmacy bag, and let himself in through the front door. The foyer was quiet, the front rooms were dark, and then, down the hallway, from behind the half-open door of his mother's room, he heard movement. He rounded the corner into the hallway and pushed open the door to his mother's room. What he saw stopped him cold. Portia stood behind Loretta's recliner, her back to the door, slightly angled toward the end table. Her posture was casual, practiced even, like she had done this before and knew how long it took. Her right hand was moving. Darius's eyes tracked down to the end table. Loretta's brown leather purse, small, worn soft at the corners from years of use, sat open on the surface. Portia's fingers were inside it. She was counting bills against her thumb. 4 20s, a 10. Loretta sat in the recliner with her spine pulled forward, and her hands folded tight in her lap. Her eyes were closed. Her jaw was set. She was not asleep. She was enduring. Darius did not move. He stood in the doorway and let what he was seeing settle into him one layer at a time. The way a man absorbs something his mind wants to reject, but his eyes will not allow. 1 second. 2. The money in Portia's hand. His mother's stillness. The purse left open like it had been opened before and would be opened again. 3. 4. Something happened inside his chest. Not an explosion. Something quieter than that. Something that went cold and hard and completely still, like water turning to ice. He felt it move through him from the sternum outward, and when it reached his hands and his face, everything stopped. 5. Portia turned. She saw him. Her body went rigid for half a second. The bills still fanned in her fingers, her mouth slightly open. He watched her eyes flash through something fast and private. Surprise, calculation, recovery. Then the words came. Darius, okay, I know how this looks. She lowered her hand, but did not put the money back. This isn't what you think. Your mama offered this to me last week. I needed a little cash to cover the electric. We had that gap after your big deposit cleared. You know how it gets at the end of the month? She told me to just take it when I needed it. We were going to square it up this weekend. I've got it written down. She kept going. The explanation was smooth. The words were in the right order. She had a reason for each piece of it before he even asked. That was the part that told him everything. Go upstairs, he said. His voice was quiet, level, like he was reading a measurement off a wall. Portia blinked. Darius, if you would just let me. Go upstairs, Portia. She looked at him for a moment, read something in his face that stopped whatever she was about to say next. She set the bills down on the end table, not back in the purse, just down on the surface, and left the room without another word. He listened to her footsteps on the stairs. Then he crossed the room and crouched down beside his mother's chair. "Mama." Loretta opened her eyes slowly. They were dry. She had not been crying. That was somehow worse. The composed, exhausted look of a woman who had decided ahead of time that this was simply something she had to endure. She looked at him for a long moment before she spoke. "I didn't want to say anything." Her voice was measured but tired at the edges. "I didn't want to make trouble in your house." "How many times?" She looked down at her folded hands. 4, maybe 5. I lost count of the small ones. He did not react outwardly. He kept his face still and his breathing even. "She told me you two had worked it out," Loretta said quietly. "That it was just something y'all did when things were tight. I thought I didn't want to cause problems between you. You were working so hard. I thought maybe I had misunderstood something." "You didn't misunderstand anything. I know that now." She exhaled. "I've known it for a while. She stopped, pressed her lips together. "I didn't want to be the reason things got hard for you." He reached out and took both of her hands in his. Her fingers were cool and thin, and he held them gently but firmly, the way you hold something precious. "Mama." He waited until she looked at him. "You will never have to protect me from the truth. Not ever. Do you understand me?" Loretta looked at her son for a long moment. Something shifted in her face. Not relief exactly, but the slow release of something she had been holding far too long. She gave a small nod. He stayed crouched beside her chair until he was sure she was steady. Then he stood up. He looked at the end table. The bills still sat there in a loose stack where Portia had set them. He picked them up and tucked them carefully back into his mother's purse. He closed it. Then he turned and faced the hallway. At the far end, the staircase rose toward the second floor where Portia was waiting. Darius's jaw tightened. His eyes went flat and certain. He started walking. The bedroom door was open. Portia was standing near the window when he walked in. She had changed out of her work clothes. Blazer traded for a cardigan, heels for bare feet. Softer, more approachable. He noticed that. He noticed everything now. She turned when she heard him and crossed her arms, but not defensively. More like she was bracing herself to say something difficult, something she had already rehearsed. "I need you to hear me out," she said. He said nothing. He moved to the chair in the corner of the room, the one she always complained took up too much space, and sat down. He leaned forward with his elbows on his knees and looked at her. She took that as permission. "Why were you even home this early? You said you had the Markham job running until 6. She said it without apology, like the question was genuinely relevant, like it mattered. "I'm not saying what you saw didn't look bad. I'm saying you don't have the full picture." He watched her. "Darius, I have been stretched thin for months. You know that. The household account, the bills, your mother's medical stuff on top of everything else. I feel like I'm managing all of it while you're out there focused on work, and I can't even ask you for a little breathing room without it turning into a whole conversation about the budget." She shook her head. "I never feel like I can just handle something without having to justify it to you first." She paused, adjusted, came at it from a different angle. "And your mother? I love your mother, you know I do. But she offered. She has told me more than once that she wants to contribute to this household, that she doesn't want to feel like a burden. So when she said to take it, I took it. That's it. That's all that happened." She spread her hands open. "I was going to pay it back. I had it written down. This is not the thing you're making it into." She watched him, waiting for him to interrupt or push back or get loud. He did not. He sat in the chair and he listened, and he let her go until there was nothing left. His face gave her nothing to read. His silence was not passive. She could feel the difference, and it showed. Her hands moved more than usual, her eyes kept flicking away from his and then back, and by the time she reached the end, the confidence in her voice had thinned out at the edges, like she wasn't sure she had landed where she intended to. When she finally stopped talking, the room was very quiet. "How long?" he said. Portia's brow pulled together. "What?" He looked at her steadily and said nothing more. She shook her head slowly. "I don't—" "Darius, I just explained." He stood up from the chair. He took Loretta's prescription from his jacket pocket and set it on the dresser. He pulled a clean shirt from the closet. Then he walked out of the bedroom and pulled the door shut behind him with a quiet click. He slept on the couch in the hallway, just outside his mother's door. The house was dark and still. He lay on his back with one arm across his chest and stared at the ceiling and did not sleep for a long time. He did not try to. He just let everything settle the way sediment settles at the bottom of still water. Slow, layered, clarifying. He thought about the bills in Portia's hand, the practiced ease of it. He thought about his mother's face. 4, maybe 5. I lost count of the small ones. He thought about how clean Portia's explanation had been, how ready, how every piece of it was already in order before he had asked a single question. At 11:07 p.m., he picked up his phone. Reggie answered on the second ring. "Yeah." His uncle's voice was awake and unhurried, not surprised. "I need your help," Darius said. A brief pause, then, "Where do you want to start?" Darius closed his eyes. Something in him settled. "I'll tell you Saturday," he said. "Not over the phone. I'll be here." They hung up. Darius set the phone face down on his chest and stared at the dark ceiling for another hour. He made 2 decisions before he finally slept. He would not say another word to Portia about any of it until he knew exactly what he was dealing with, and he would know exactly what he was dealing with before he did a single thing. Morning came gray and cold. Darius was up before 6. He showered, dressed, and went down to the kitchen. He made coffee. He cracked 4 eggs and scrambled them the way he always did. Low heat, slow stir. When Portia came downstairs at 6:45, he was at the table with his mug and the Tribune's sports section folded in half. She looked at him carefully when she sat down. He looked up and gave her a small nod. "Morning." She said, "Good morning," back. Quiet. A little uncertain. He ate. He rinsed his plate. He kissed her on the cheek before he left, the same way he always did, pulled on his jacket, and walked out to his truck. He backed out of the driveway, got 2 blocks away, and called Jayla. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "Hey, Dee, what's up?" "I need to sit down with you," he said. "About the accounts. This Saturday, if you can." The drive to Jayla's took 22 minutes. Darius rode in silence. No radio, no phone calls, just the gray November sky pressing flat over the expressway and the manila folder sitting on the passenger seat. Thick with 3 years of printed account statements he had pulled from the joint account portal at 5:30 that morning while Portia slept. He had organized them himself. Chronological, paper-clipped by quarter. He had not analyzed them. That was Jayla's job. His job had been to get them here without leaving a single footprint. Jayla lived in a 2-flat in Bronzeville, ground floor, with a kitchen table big enough to spread work across. She was already at the stove when he knocked. Coffee brewing, a yellow legal pad on the table, 2 pens set parallel beside it. She did not ask him how he was doing. She looked at the folder under his arm and said, "Sit down." That was why he trusted her. She set 2 mugs on the table and sat across from him. He slid the folder over. She opened it, took the first stack of statements, and began. She worked the way he worked, quietly, systematically, without rushing. She went through each page with a pen in her hand, circling certain transactions, making small marks in the margins. Every few minutes she would pull the legal pad closer and write something down. He sat across from her and drank his coffee and let her move at her own speed. About 40 minutes in, she stopped. She set down her pen and looked at the legal pad. Then she looked at him. "How much do you already know?" she said. "I know something is there. I don't know the shape of it." She nodded. She turned the legal pad toward him and began walking him through it. The withdrawals were never large. That was the first thing. Nothing that would catch his eye after a good contract came in. Nothing that would feel like a missing chunk. They ranged from $80 to $270. Always under $300. Spread out. Sometimes 2 weeks apart. Sometimes 6 weeks. No visible pattern on the surface, but Jayla had drawn a second column on the legal pad. Dates of Darius's large deposits, the payouts from his bigger commercial contracts, 3 and 4 times a year, the kind that hit the joint account before he moved the business portion to his operating account. She set a ruler down the page so he could see both columns side by side. Every withdrawal landed within 4 days of a deposit. Not every time, but enough times, 17 out of 23, that the timing was not coincident. She was using the deposit as cover, Jayla said. Her voice was even, professional. When a big number comes in, you're not watching the small numbers leave. The account balance goes up, you feel comfortable, you're not scanning the outflow line by line. She tapped the legal pad. That's not an accident. That's someone who understood how you manage money and used it. Darius looked at the columns for a long moment. How much total? Jayla turned to the last page of her notes. Across 28 months, $14,200. He did not react outwardly. Inside, something moved. Not surprise, but the specific weight of a thing you feared being confirmed. He had sensed something was off for a long time. Sensing it and seeing it laid out in columns with a ruler running between them were two very different things. He reached over and picked up the second pen. Jayla slid the legal pad toward him without being asked. He wrote the number himself, in his own hand, at the bottom of the page. $14,200. He wrote the date next to it. Then he tore the sheet cleanly from the pad and set it on top of the statements. This wasn't impulsive, Jayla said. She wasn't softening it. She wasn't being cruel either. She was just being accurate, and they both understood that accuracy was what he had come for. Somebody impulsive takes a couple $100 and doesn't think about the timing. This pattern, the amounts staying under 300, the withdrawals clustering around your deposits, that's deliberate. That's someone paying attention over a long period of time and adjusting. He opened the new folder he had brought with him. Plain, dark blue, nothing written on the cover yet. He placed the legal pad sheet inside first, then the account statements behind it. He pressed the folder flat against the table and wrote on the tab in black marker, just the date. Nothing else needed to be on it yet. He thanked Jayla. She walked him to the door and put a hand briefly on his arm, just for a second, and said nothing, because there was nothing useful left to say. He went to his truck, set the folder on the passenger seat, and drove home. Dinner that evening was baked chicken, rice, and green beans. Portia had cooked. She did that sometimes on Saturdays, made something real, set the table properly, lit the small candle on the counter. Darius came in, washed his hands, and sat down. They talked about nothing in particular. A show she was watching, a neighbor's new car, whether the weather was going to turn again before Thanksgiving. He asked her how her week was shaping up. She told him. He listened. After, he stood at the kitchen sink and washed the dishes by hand, slow and steady, the warm water running over his fingers. Behind him, the television came on. Portia tucked herself into the corner of the couch with a blanket across her lap. Darius scrubbed a pan and stared out the small window above the sink at the dark backyard. His face was completely unreadable. The call came on a Wednesday. Darius was pulling into a hardware store parking lot when his phone buzzed on the center console. Uncle Reggie's name on the screen. He parked and picked up. "You got a minute?" Reggie said. "Yeah, go ahead." Reggie was not a man who called to talk. When he called, he had something to say, and he said it without decoration. Darius had known this his entire life. "I've been sitting on something for a little while," Reggie said. "Wasn't sure if I was making something out of nothing, but I don't think I am." "Tell me." Reggie took a breath. "You know that Marriott off the 190? Near O'Hare?" "I know it. Portia's car was in that lot on a Thursday night, 3 weeks ago. Silver Accord, her plates. I was coming back from dropping Marcus at the airport, and I caught it on my way past. Didn't think much of it at first. Figured maybe a work event. Something in that area. But I went back that same way 2 weeks later. Different errand, different night. Friday that time. A pause. Same car. Same lot." Darius sat very still. "I didn't follow her," Reggie said. "Didn't go in. I'm not that kind of person, and you know that. I just saw what I saw, and I wrote it down, because something told me to write it down." Another pause. "Both times she told you she had client dinners?" "Yes," Darius said. The line was quiet for a moment. "All right," Reggie said. "Now you know what I know." "You did right by telling me," Darius said. "Thank you." He sat in the parking lot for a while after they hung up. He did not go inside the hardware store. He just sat there with the engine off, watching a woman push a cart through the lot with a toddler riding up front. The kid's legs dangling over the front of the cart, kicking at nothing. Then he pulled out his folder and added a new page. 2 dates. The hotel name. Reggie's account, written in plain language. He capped the pen and slid the folder back under his seat. He went inside and bought the wire connectors he needed and drove to his job. The blazer was hanging on the back of the bedroom door. Portia had come home Friday evening in it, charcoal gray, the one she wore for client meetings. She had gone straight upstairs, changed into sweats, and left it hanging there the way she always did when she planned to wear something again. Saturday morning she was in the shower. Darius came upstairs for a tape measure he had left in the closet. He walked past the blazer and stopped. He stood there for 2 or 3 seconds. Then he reached into the right breast pocket. Nothing. The left side pocket, a receipt. He checked the inner pocket. A business card. He held it by the edges. Thick stock. Clean design. The name was printed in small, dark letters. Brett Halliwell. Regional Sales Director. Below that, Portia's company name, a cell number, a Chicago office address. The shower was still running. Darius photographed both sides of the card with his phone. He put the card back exactly where he found it, in the same orientation, and walked downstairs. That afternoon, while Portia ran errands, he sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and searched the name. Brett Halliwell came up quickly. LinkedIn profile, a professional headshot, broad smile, background in the pharmaceutical space, regional sales director, Midwest Territory, based out of Chicago. The profile had mutual connections with Portia. He had been at the company about 2 years. Darius looked at the photo for a long moment. Normal looking, mid-40s maybe. Not remarkable. He printed the profile page, folded it once, and added it to the folder with a handwritten note clipped to the front. The note read, "Brett Halliwell, card found in blazer pocket, inner lining 1114. See photo P2. He wrote it the way he wrote everything, plainly, precisely, without heat. Nadine Price's office was on the 14th floor of a building on Michigan Avenue. Clean lobby, quiet elevator, a reception area that felt less like a waiting room and more like a library. Books on actual shelves, no television, no noise. Nadine herself was compact and unhurried. She shook his hand, gestured to the chair across from her desk, and sat down with the particular posture of someone who did not move unless moving served a purpose. He opened the folder on her desk and walked her through it in order. Account statements. Jayla's summary page. The total. The pattern Jayla had mapped. The 2 hotel sightings, dated and sourced. The business card, photographed. The name, researched. Nadine did not interrupt. She read each page completely before moving to the next. When she reached the end, she closed the folder and set it flat on the desk in front of her. "You've been doing this correctly," she said. "I want to make sure I keep doing it correctly. That's why I'm here." She nodded once, folding her hands. 30 more days. You keep gathering. Nothing moves legally until we have the full picture. No confrontation, no financial changes she might notice, no signals of any kind. She met his eyes. "Can you do that?" "Yes," Darius said. "Then we'll be in a very strong position when the time comes." He stood, and they shook hands across the desk. He took the elevator down to the lobby, walked out through the glass doors onto Michigan Avenue, and turned south toward the parking garage. In his coat pocket, the folder was already open in his mind, the next page blank, waiting to be filled. The dishes were done by 7. Portia had eaten quickly, said something about a call she needed to take, and gone upstairs. Her footsteps crossed the ceiling overhead. Bedroom, then the small office at the end of the hall. The door clicked shut. Darius dried his hands on the dish towel and went to check on his mother. Loretta was awake in her recliner, the television on low, a nature program casting soft blue light across the room. She had eaten well tonight, more than usual. Her color looked better than it had at the start of the week. She glanced up when Darius came in and smiled the way she always smiled at him, like he was still 8 years old and she was glad to see him home. He pulled the footstool close and sat down beside her. For a few minutes, they just watched the television together. A herd of elephants moving across dry grass. The narrator's voice, quiet and unhurried. Then Loretta reached over and turned the volume down. "She told me you said it was all right," she said. Her voice was steady. She was not looking at him. She was looking at her hands folded in her lap, the knuckles swollen at the joints, the way they had been for the past year. But her voice was steady. Darius waited. "The first time it happened," Loretta said, "I thought I must have misunderstood something. She came in and said she needed a little cash for the house. Said you two had worked out a system for when things were tight. Said you knew about it." She paused. I didn't want to question it. It was only $40. Outside, a car passed slowly on the street. The television light shifted as a cloud moved across the savanna on the screen. The second time she said the same thing, that you had both agreed, that it was easier this way than going to the ATM when things were short. Loretta's hands moved slightly, resettling in her lap. I started to wonder, because you never mentioned any system to me, and you tell me things. You always have. "Yeah," Darius said. "I do." So I asked her once. I said, "Does Darius know you're taking this?" Loretta finally looked at him. Her eyes were clear and direct. She got very quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't peaceful. Then she said, and I remember it clearly, because it sat wrong with me for a long time after. She said, "You bringing this up is only going to stress him out. He's already carrying enough with you being here." The room was very still. Darius did not move. He did not look away from his mother's face. "She said he's already carrying enough," Loretta repeated, softer now. "With you being here." She let that sit for a moment. I didn't say anything after that. I didn't know what to say. And I was... She stopped. Started again. "I didn't want to be a burden to you, baby. That's the truth of it." She knew that. And she used it. Darius reached over and put his hand over hers. He didn't say anything for a moment. The elephants on the screen moved in slow, heavy silence. "She used your name to take the money," he said. "And she used your love for me to keep you quiet." Loretta nodded once. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." "Don't apologize," he said. "Not for a single second of it." He sat with her until her eyes grew heavy. He got up and put the kettle on, made her a cup of chamomile the way she liked it. A little honey? No bag left in too long. He brought it back and set it on the end table beside her, the same end table where her purse sat. He moved the purse to the shelf across the room without saying anything about it. He sat with her until the tea was gone, and her breathing had slowed, and her head had tipped gently back against the headrest. Then he turned off the television, turned on the small lamp in the corner, and went out through the front door. The driveway was cold and dark and quiet. He sat in the driver's seat of his truck with the door closed and the engine off. The street was empty. The neighbor's porch light was on across the way, a small orange glow that didn't reach very far. He put his hands flat on his thighs and let himself feel it, not the anger. Anger was easy, and he had no use for easy right now. The grief. The specific grief of understanding exactly how it had been done. The precision of it. The way she had found the one lever that would keep a good woman silent, and she had pressed on it, and pressed on it, and pressed on it until the money was gone, and the silence was solid, and she had never had to worry about either of them saying a word. 2 minutes. He gave himself 2 minutes. Then he reached under the seat, pulled out the folder, and uncapped his pen. The folder got thicker every week. Darius kept it in the lockbox under the back seat of his truck, the same one he used for job permits and insurance documents. Nobody would look there. Portia had never shown the slightest interest in anything related to the business. That had always been his world, and she had been content to let it stay that way. He used that now. Nadine had given him a list on a yellow legal notepad during their second meeting, written by hand, nothing digital, nothing that could be forwarded or screenshotted. He worked through it the way he worked through a punch list on a job site, one item at a time. No rushing, no skipping. The account records were already done. Jayla had printed everything and organized it by month, each page dated and initialed. Darius had his own copy, handwritten with the totals circled in red pen. 28 months. $14,200. A number that looked different every time he wrote it. The financial timeline took him 4 evenings at the kitchen table after Portia had gone to bed. He cross-referenced every withdrawal against his own deposit records, building a picture that anyone could follow. The kind of document that didn't require explanation, that simply showed what happened and when. He laid it out in a single column, clean and factual, the way his father had taught him to write up job estimates. Say what you mean what you say. Don't waste the other man's time. His father had been gone since Darius was 19, but some lessons stuck. Loretta's testimony was harder, not because she was unwilling. Once she understood that the written account would matter, that her words, in her own handwriting, would carry weight in a way that memory alone could not. She sat down at the kitchen table on a Tuesday afternoon and wrote 2.5 pages without stopping. Her handwriting was careful and slow, the pen gripped firm despite the swollen joints, each sentence precise. She did not exaggerate. She did not editorialize. She stated what Portia had said to her, when she had said it, and what it had made her do. Then she signed the bottom of the last page with her full name. Reggie was there. He signed below hers as witness, then put his initials on the bottom of the first 2 pages. He did it quietly and without ceremony, the way he did everything. When Loretta slid the pages across the table to Darius, she said, "That's all of it." "I know," he said. He added it to the folder. The bank accounts took 1 phone call and 2 in-person visits. On Nadine's instruction, Darius separated every business account from any joint access. Quietly, administratively, nothing that would flag a sudden change. He opened a personal checking account at a different bank entirely, moved 3 months of operational income into it, and arranged for all new contract payments to route there going forward. He did it during lunch breaks, between jobs, the way he had always handled the business, steadily, without announcing himself. Portia noticed none of it. What she did notice, apparently, was that the first floor of the house could use new hardwood floors. She brought it up on a Thursday evening, casual, almost offhand, the way she introduced things she had already decided. A home equity line of credit, she said. Just enough for the floors and maybe the kitchen backsplash. It made financial sense, she said. The house had appreciated. Darius listened. He nodded. He said he would look into it. He called Nadine the next morning. No, Nadine said. Clean and simple. No elaboration needed. That's what I thought, Darius said. No financial moves without my sign-off from here. None. Not a dollar. Understood. He reported back to Portia that weekend that the timing wasn't right. He had a couple of big receivables still pending and didn't want to take on a line until the books settled. She accepted this without visible concern. She had no reason not to. That was the thing about a woman who believed she had already won. She stopped checking. The family meeting was on a Sunday afternoon. Loretta was in her recliner. Reggie sat in the armchair across from her, his arms resting on his knees, his face still. Yvette, Darius's cousin on his father's side, 2 years older, who had cried happy tears at his wedding and kept a photo of him and Portia on her refrigerator, sat on the couch with her hands folded and her expression carefully neutral. Darius set the folder on the coffee table and went through it without rushing. He showed them the account records. He showed them the timeline. He read from Loretta's testimony, though Loretta was sitting right there and didn't need it read to her. He showed them the card with Brett's name on it and what he had found when he looked it up. He did not tell them how to feel about it. He just showed them what was there. When he was done, the room was quiet. Yvette sat very still for a long moment. Her jaw was tight. She looked down at her hands. "What do you need from us?" she said. The last night arrived the way last nights always do. Unremarkably. The house quiet. The hour late. Darius sat at the kitchen table with the folder open in front of him and a cup of coffee he had stopped drinking 20 minutes ago. He went through everything one more time. Not looking for anything new, just reading it, making sure every page was in order, every date correct, every amount accurate. When he reached the last page, Loretta's signature and Reggie's beneath it, he stopped. He sat with it for a moment. Then he closed the folder. He set it on the table, pushed it gently to the side, put both hands flat on the table surface, and looked at the far wall for a moment, at nothing in particular. In the morning, Nadine would file the petition. The papers would be served in 48 hours. The process server's name was Marcus Webb. No relation. And he was good at his job precisely because he did not look like someone who was good at his job. He wore a gray fleece and carried a manila envelope the way a delivery driver carries a package, casually, without ceremony, with the practiced indifference of a man running errands. He had been briefed on the timing. 11:45 on a Tuesday, between the 11 o'clock team call and the noon client lunch. The hallway outside the third-floor conference rooms at Portia's office building near the Magnificent Mile. Nadine had selected the timing herself. Not the lobby, where it might be missed. Not the parking garage, where it might be private. The hallway. The one Portia walked every single workday, between the rooms where she performed best, in front of the people whose opinions she managed most carefully. Marcus found her exactly where he expected to find her, coming out of the conference room with a leather portfolio tucked under her arm, mid-sentence with a woman in a gray blazer, already moving toward whatever came next. He stepped into her path. Portia Webb? She stopped, looked at him. The professional warmth in her face shifted almost imperceptibly. A flicker, just beneath the surface. Yes? He held out the envelope. You've been served. She took it the way she did most things that caught her off guard, without flinching, without making a sound, with a control so practiced it had become indistinguishable from calm. She tucked the envelope under her arm like it was a memo. She said something smooth and brief to the woman in the gray blazer. She kept walking, but the woman in the gray blazer had seen it. So had the two men coming out of the adjacent conference room. So had the assistant at the corner desk, who had looked up at exactly the wrong moment. In an office full of people who made their living reading a room, not one of them missed what had just happened. Portia made it to her car before she called him. She sat in the driver's seat with the envelope on the passenger seat, still sealed, though she already knew what was inside. She pressed his name in her phone and held it to her ear. It rang 4 times. "Hey, you've reached Darius. Leave me something." She hung up. Redialed. 4 rings. Voicemail. She sat very still for a moment, looking through the windshield at the concrete wall of the parking structure. Her jaw was set. Her breathing was even. She was already organizing herself, sorting through approaches the way she always did, cataloging options, deciding which version of this conversation would serve her best. This was not over. It was a document. Documents had responses. Everything had a counter. She started the car. She made good time on the expressway. When she pulled into the driveway, her face was composed, shoulders relaxed. The envelope was in her bag. She had walked into difficult rooms her entire career. She knew how to enter a space and take control of it before anyone had a chance to set the terms. That was what she was going to do now. She unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house was quiet. Not the regular quiet of an empty afternoon, but something different. A settled quiet, the kind that meant people were present and waiting. She stood in the foyer for 1 beat and read it. Reggie was in the living room, in the armchair by the window. He sat with his hands resting on the arms of the chair, looking straight ahead. He did not look at her when she came in. He did not acknowledge her at all. Through the open doorway to the den, she could see Loretta in her recliner, awake, her eyes open and steady, watching the doorway with an expression Portia could not quite name. And Darius. Darius was at the kitchen table. He was seated squarely in the center chair, both forearms resting on the table, his hands loosely clasped. He was wearing the same dark blue work shirt he'd had on that morning. The folder, the one she had never asked about, had never had reason to think about, sat on the table in front of him. Closed, centered. He was not on his phone. He was not pretending to do something else. He was simply there, waiting, in the particular way of a man who has already done everything that needed doing, and now only has to sit. He looked at her when she came through from the foyer. His face was even. Not cold, not angry, just clear. The way it looked when he had already made up his mind about something, and the deciding was behind him. She opened her mouth. He said it first. "Sit down." Portia sat. She set her bag on the floor beside the chair, folded her hands on the table, and looked at him with the expression she used in rooms where someone was trying to catch her off balance. Open, attentive, faintly patient. The way you look at someone you are willing to hear out. Darius opened the folder. He did not make a speech. He did not start with an accusation. He pulled the first page from the stack and set it on the table in front of her, facing her direction, so she could read it clearly. Joint account, 28 months. He pointed to the column Jayla had highlighted in yellow. These are the withdrawals, under $300 each time. Right here, you can see they're spaced out. Never 2 in the same week. Portia looked at the page. Her expression did not change. "Darius, I used our joint account. The total is $14,200. He said it the same way he would read a measurement on a job site. Flat. Accurate. Timed within 3 to 5 days of every large deposit I made after a contract closed. A pause. That pattern is not an accident. She shifted. Just slightly. I don't know what you're trying to suggest, but household expenses. He set down the second page. A printed calendar grid. 2 months marked. 2 locations circled. Hotel near O'Hare. Dates and times written in Reggie's handwriting underneath. You told me those were client dinners. She looked at the page. Something moved behind her eyes. She recalibrated fast. He could see it. The way she found her footing again like she always did. You had someone follow me? Nobody followed you. His voice stayed level. Someone who loves me noticed your car and wrote it down. That's all. So this is what we're doing. Her tone shifted into something warmer, almost disappointed. Like she was the reasonable one. You've been building a case against me? In your own home? Instead of talking to me? I tried talking to you. He set down the business card. Brett Hallowell's name facing up. You performed confusion. That landed. She looked at the card for a half-second longer than she should have. Then she pivoted. You want to talk about what's been wrong in this marriage? Her voice was steady, but her chin had lifted, the way it did when she was moving from defense to offense. Fine. Let's talk about it. You have been emotionally checked out for 2 years, Darius. 2 years of you putting every single thing, your business, your crew, your mother, ahead of us. I have been living in this house feeling like a guest? Like a guest, he repeated quietly. Yes, like I don't matter in my own home. Like her being here is more important than… He placed a document on the table. It stopped her. It was a single sheet of paper. The handwriting on it was slow and careful. The handwriting of a woman whose hands had grown unsteady, pressing each letter down like it mattered. Because it did. Portia stared at it. That is my mother's written statement, Darius said. In her own words, signed, witnessed by Reggie. He gave her a moment to read the top lines. It details what you told her. That I had agreed you could take money from her purse when we were short. That it was a system we had set up together. He paused. And what you told her would happen to me if she ever brought it up. The color in Portia's face did not drain. It held. But something behind it went out. Like a light switched off in a back room. She did not speak. You used my name, Darius said. Simply. Like he was identifying a wire. To take from a sick woman. And then you used her love for me to keep her quiet. He let that sit between them for a moment. That's what this is. The performance was over. She wasn't reaching for another angle. She was just sitting there, across from him, with every layer peeled back. And for the first time in 4 years he was looking at what was underneath all of it. It wasn't remorse. It was something smaller and colder than that. It was a woman who had been completely seen and had nowhere left to go. He straightened the pages and spoke. Nadine has structured the settlement to recover the documented financial losses first. The $14,000 comes back to me through the division terms. You keep your retirement accounts. I keep the house and buy out your share at assessed value. There is no negotiation on the financial recovery. It's in writing, it's documented, and it will hold. He looked at her directly. I'm not asking for your agreement. I'm telling you what is going to happen. She said nothing. He stood, and before he pushed in his chair, he looked at her one final time. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, with something quieter than either. I always knew you were capable of more than this, he said. That's the part I'll carry, not the money. He left the folder on the table. Portia got up. She picked up her bag. She walked out of the kitchen without looking at Reggie, without looking toward the den. The front door opened. It closed. Darius walked into the den and pulled the chair close to his mother's recliner. He sat down beside her. Loretta reached over and placed her hand on top of his without saying a word. He let her. 14 months later, the back porch still smelled like cedar. Darius had replaced the old boards in March, warped and soft from years of Chicago winters, and the new wood had been holding its scent all the way through summer. He noticed things like that. Always had. He was sitting in one of the 2 low chairs he'd set out there in June, a glass of iced tea sweating on the armrest, a contract spread open across his knee. Troy had flagged 3 line items in the electrical scope for the second commercial job. a strip mall in Madison, and wanted Darius's eyes on it before Monday's walkthrough. Good instincts Troy had. Caught things that most guys with twice the experience would have walked right past. Darius made a small mark in the margin with his pen, turned the page. The yard was quiet. The garden along the back fence had grown in thick this year, tomatoes going heavy on the vine, a row of marigolds his mother had asked him to plant in April because she liked the color from her window. He had planted them on a Tuesday after work, in the dark almost, with a flashlight propped against a flower pot. Got every one of them in straight. That window was new too. The whole back of the first floor was different now. When he bought out Portia's share of the house and had the renovation done, he knocked out the wall between the old den and the small storage room beside it. Loretta's room was nearly twice the size now. High ceilings, pale yellow walls she had picked herself from a strip of paint samples she'd studied for 2 full weeks, like it was a serious decision, because, to her, it was. The new window faced the garden and let in the afternoon light in a wide, clean rectangle that moved slowly across her floor as the day turned. She said it felt like a real room now. It had always been a real room to him, but he understood what she meant. The sliding door behind him opened. Uncle Reggie came out with his own glass of tea and dropped into the chair beside Darius with the ease of a man who had been sitting in chairs beside this family his entire life. He didn't say anything right away. He looked out at the yard, the way he looked at most things, steady, unhurried, taking in what was there. A blue jay landed on the fence post near the tomatoes, looked around like it owned something, and flew off. Reggie watched it go. "Troy handling himself all right on the Madison job?" he asked. "Better than all right." Darius turned another page. He caught a load calculation error in the original plans that the engineer missed. Sent me a 3-paragraph email about it at 6 in the morning. Reggie made a sound that meant he approved of that. "Good kid. Good electrician," Darius said. "That's more important." They sat with that for a moment. Somewhere down the block, a lawnmower started up and settled into its even, droning rhythm. The light through the yard was that particular shade of late summer gold, thick and warm, the kind that made everything look like it was right where it was supposed to be. Through the open window to his left, Darius could hear the faint sound of the television in his mother's room. She was watching one of her Saturday afternoon programs, the volume low the way she kept it now. Her doctor had adjusted the treatment protocol back in the spring, a different combination, more closely monitored, and the difference had been visible within weeks. She was sleeping better, eating more. Some mornings she sat up at the kitchen table and had coffee with him before he left for a job, and they talked about nothing in particular, and it was the best part of his day. He had not thought it was possible to get that back. He thought about that sometimes, not often, but honestly, the way you think about something that almost didn't happen. Reggie set his glass down on the armrest and looked over at him, not with the weight of a man about to say something difficult, just looking. "You doing all right?" he asked. It was a simple question. Reggie had always asked simple questions, which was why they always meant more than they sounded like. Darius didn't answer right away. He thought about it the way he did everything, honestly, all the way through, without skipping to the part that was easiest to say. He thought about the folder, closed and filed away in his office drawer. He thought about the morning the settlement was signed, how he had driven home alone and sat in the driveway for a few minutes before going inside. Not because he was sad, but because he was making sure he was ready to walk through that door and mean it. He thought about Loretta at the kitchen table that morning with her coffee, pointing out that the marigolds were starting to bloom. He looked out at the yard. "Yeah," he said. "I really am?" He set down the contract, picked up his iced tea, and let the afternoon be exactly what it was. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.